You don't know about me, but now. You don't know about me, but now. Read up and learn about me, but now. You don't know about me, but now. Read up and learn about me, but now.
What's up, you guys? It's your girl, Nyasia Chane'l. We are here at the Journey Podcast Show, and I'm here with my special co-host, Mezzy.
That's me, Mezzy D.
And today, you guys, we have a special guest by the name of Dr.Janie Lacy. Did I say it correctly? I did say it. Okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's Saturday and I live in Florida and it's sunny, so I'm doing very well.
But you had way too much sun in there. I was like, that is not a New York sun. I knew it.
Honestly, we didn't see that since, like, what is it, July? Maybe July. I don't know. But just to give you guys a quick summary of who she is, Dr. Janie Lacy, LMHC, NCC, CSAT, is a licensed relationship trauma psychotherapist who has over 15 years of experience working with those who have unsuccessfully tried to break free from their toxic relationship patterns. By addressing the root issue of their suffering, Janie creates a breakthrough experiences from the inside out, allowing her clients to finally find peace within themselves they have so desperately longed for in life. She is a nationally recognized expert in the field of relationship trauma. Janie has been featured on Good Morning America, CNN, HLN, ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, to name a few. So we dealing with the real deal here. Okay, y'all. And if you would like to know more about her, make sure you guys stay tuned. We're going to be back with a real quick commercial break, so don't move, okay?
You don't know about me, but now. You don't know about me, but now. Read up and learn about me, but now. You don't know about me, but now. Read up and learn about me, but now. Call me crazy, but I think it's kinda
Welcome back to the Journey Podcast Show with your girl, Nyasia Chane'l, and
Mezzy D.
yes, and we are here with Dr. Janie Lacy. Thank you so much for being here with us today and giving us your time. I'm super excited to hear all of everything that you're about.
Absolutely. It's my absolute pleasure.
So you say you're in Florida. Oh my goodness. I'm so jealous. I love Florida. I love it. I love it down there. The air is great. It's like a breath of fresh air, I feel.
And she looks like a breath of fresh air. So you know she's from Florida. Like, come on.
Yeah. You know how it is. Yeah. So after hearing all that you have done and accomplished, tell us more about yourself in your own words.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my passions is to help women break free of toxic relationships. So one of my passion projects that I've really been focusing on is called Woman Redeem. And Women Redeem is for women, generally the women that come through are from 18 to about 55. There's a wide range that have a pattern of toxic relationships versus a problem, because sometimes we can have relationship problems, which are very different than relationship pattern. That means that Tyrone is now named John, right? It's just the same types of stuff over and over and over again. And a lot of that has to do with us as women not healing from things, from whether it's from childhood, whether it's trauma, whether it's not developing self-worth. So it's the inside work. And I'm a big believer. Yes, I have a Psych D, but I believe that we all need to have a PhD in our own history. We need to understand why we do the things that we do, because if we don't, then we're going to be reactive to life. We're just going to be around just reacting to life versus being responsive, because the most important decisions that we make will determine if we're going to have a good life or if we're going to have a bad life. It's all about our decision making. So that's one of my passion, as far as I'm a CEO of Life Counseling Solutions. So I own a full counseling center here in Orlando. We have 8 therapists. Everyone specializes in different areas. So it's my big bucket. And then I'm also a faculty member with the International Institute of Trauma and Addictive Professionals. So what that means to you is that I train other therapists how to work with women and trauma around sex and love specifically. And then the best job in the world, you're probably seeing in my background, is being the mother to my 9-year-old son, Rylan. So many different hats, but I do speaking and do a lot of different things that fall under my purpose and my passion in life.
I love that. But I'm curious, okay, because this might be digging deep, but I'm super curious as to what sparked you to become this, right? There had to be, maybe you met, had a good friend, a best friend, or maybe something happened with you in your life. Like, what made you become a trauma expert?
Well, all of that. The first thing I would tell you is that every single person, we have things that happen that are out of our control. So the very first thing that happened that was a huge trauma for my family was when I was 10 years old, sleeping in the middle of the night, that there was this big bang in the night of our door. And my mom and my dad, they were rushing down to see what that big bang was. So we were just told to go back to sleep. And in the morning, we found out, this is what we were told, that our sister, her name was Carmen, was in the hospital. And our parents kept going on with this story until, just as most 10-year-olds, I'm sure my son will probably be coming around the corner soon, like to eavesdrop and see what's going on. So heard my mom on the phone, and she was talking to someone, and she mentioned that when they had gotten to Carmen's apartment, they were taking her out in the body bag. So in that moment, I was a little confused, because here we were told that she was in a hospital, which I realize now, obviously looking back, it was to buy time. And then to find out by overhearing that my sister was actually dead. But what happened was, not only was she dead, but she was murdered. So she was 19 and she had 4 kids by the age of 19. And she was leaving one relationship to another relationship. And if you don't know, I'm going to share with you, like 1 out of 3 women will not only experience domestic abuse in a relationship, but 1 out of 3 will be murdered or killed by the hands of their partner or their lover. So my sister became that statistic. So she was leaving a relationship to go to another relationship. He strangled her. So it's a little trigger warning for the 2 of you. He strangled her in front of their 2 kids. So that was one of many things that have occurred that at some point I had to look at, okay, what is going on here? Because then my father, who's no longer here, was an alcoholic and was a drug abuser. And when you're a kid growing up in this environment, you don't necessarily know these things, but as you become a person and you become a young adult, you start noticing the signs and the symptoms and all these other things. So when my father died at 62, when my son was 6 months old, so this was about not 10 years ago, he died because he never was able to get out of that pattern of addiction of alcohol and, having other issues as well. So when we start stepping back and understand that when we have I believe, a mantle on our life, meaning that we change all the generations before us, you don't take that purpose very lightly. Right. So I believe that there's a calling on my life and to break free from all the generations that were before me, so that the generations, my son and many 3 children's children, generations that are to come, are very different than what I experienced. So I'm the first person in my family that has a doctorate. So I'm the first person in my family that is a business owner, right? So there's many things that I've been really focused on in breaking, so that the generations that are going to come through me and through my cycle of, is going to be very, very different. And then there's other stories that I can, tell you that, that I had also gotten married pretty young. And I was in my own pattern of realizing, okay, here I am, chosen someone who I met in college, and we did all the right things as a Christian couple. And I realized that I ended up particularly marrying my dad. And I didn't realize that sometimes if someone's not drinking, they don't have the same exact thing that your dad has. There's still the same emotional challenges, so to speak. So for some people, they stay for their children. So I was married. We were together going on about 15 years, probably at that time. And then I had my son, had my son at 35. So had my first child And most people would stay for children. I left for my son because one thing I had the mindset that, okay, I had a toxic mindset in the sense that I'll deal with whatever I have to deal with. But once I saw that my son at a very young age was having a reaction to an interaction that his dad and I were having, a light bulb moment came on and said, you know what, I'm repeating the same pattern that I've come from. And I never thought I would be here. Right. So, you know, one of the things that I teach women is that we have to have our own purpose. We have to have, men are not to be paychecks, right? Because I had my own, so I was able to leave and I was able to live actually better in many ways by making that decision. So my purpose really got birthed from not only my own decisions, but taking the time to look back at my own family's history. And I'll tell you right now, when you start talking about your family history, you are going to make some people upset. You're going to piss some people off, right? When you start talking about stuff, right? Because on my dad's death certificate, it says he died of a heart attack. Now we know he didn't die of a heart attack. He died of alcoholism. He had a relapse, and right. So we know the truth, but people are afraid to really call out the truth because that means they also have to look at their own truth. So that's a little bit about my own personal story that put me into a position to get curious about me. And then I decided I was pursuing my MBA degree at the University of Central Florida. And I met a licensed psychotherapist, and we were supposed to do some workshops together, how to bloom where you're planted and do all these other types of things. So through my experience with her, because I had a toxic mentality around mental health, I was just like, okay, well, Black people, we don't go to mental health and we go to Jesus, right? So we had this mentality that was put on me. So then I met someone and I realized, okay, she's really cool and she's healthy and she's a counselor. So it kind of made me lean in a little bit. And through that process, I had sort of my own counseling and my own experience. Okay, let me see what this is all about. And then I had a mentor at the time, make a very long story short. I had a mentor at the time. And I said to him, I said, I think I'm going to drop out of the MBA program and I'm going to go into counseling psychology. And he was kind of like a father figure to me. So he said, Janie, I don't know why I didn't think of that before. So I made that decision to enter into a different program. But the funny thing that happened, which kind of lines it all up for me, and this is a little trigger warning, is one of my first clients in my internship program in particular. I couldn't understand why she had, so they had brought her to me 2 weeks after, and this is a trigger warning, she was gang raped, and she had a lot of different types of things that occurred to her where bottles were shoved up her vagina and a lot of different things that happened to her. And here I am, this new intern, and working with this young woman who had this sexual trauma occur. And I'll make a long story short, I ended up working with her for a year. And I'll tell you, ladies, I did not know what I was doing at the time. I was still an intern trying to figure this out, And I kept, and to this day, I still keep in touch with this young lady. So there is a beauty there. But at that time, I couldn't understand, okay, this trauma occurred. And a year later, she came back into my office, and now she was stripping. She was doing a lot of things where she was exploiting herself. And in my mind, I couldn't understand how this person can have this sexual trauma and have all these things done, and now you're exploiting yourself. So that made me lean in to looking at women, love, sex, and trauma, and all the crossroads as to why we do the things that we do. So that kind of birthed my program, Woman Redeemed, but then me also specializing in helping women through sexual trauma and understanding our own relationships with relationships.
Right. Wow. I'm blown away.
That was better than I even thought. I was like, wait, wow. That was a lot.
Wait, hold on. Because, wow, it's interesting to hear that, even everything that you've experienced, you've turned it and made it into something that you can help other people get through. And I know even for you that must have been traumatic for you to have to deal with someone like that hands-on, because I think it's different from, you learn about it, how you have to speak to people in school and stuff like that. And it's different when it's actually an actual person with actual feelings. And it may not be textbook of what they do, and I understand that just because I went to college at Purchase College. I got a bachelor's degree in sociology. So they tell us that. They're like, okay, yeah, you're gonna come against real life situation problems, And hearing from what you're saying, I couldn't even think about that. You know what I'm saying? Because you think it's like, oh, it seems so it seems so easy for someone to be able to get out of a situation like that, you would think. And That's just crazy. I'm sorry. I'm like, wow, I'm blown away right now. But so what do you like most about your field or your job?
You know, there's a woman right now that I see occasionally. And when I met her and her husband, probably, I don't know, I'm gonna guess maybe 8 years ago, was doing couples counseling with them. And they were married at that time, probably 20 years, very toxic couple. And and they have since divorced, but now she's in a relationship and it's healthy, and she's found the man of her dreams, and he treats her more than she would ever imagine she could be treated. And she went through the Women Redeemed program. So seeing her not only deal with her own stuff, but when we as women, when we deal with our stuff, has nothing to do with anyone else. We deal with our own stuff, our mindset, our inner work, our body work, and we do the work. It changes our decisions and who we allow access to, and we do the hard stuff. So this woman, and I had no ties to her decisions because I don't tell people what to do with their life because I'm not tied to the outcome. They have to live with their decisions. So she made a decision to leave that, 20-year abusive relationship. And she was so devastated because she had gotten married at such a young age, and she would never think that she would find someone, at her older age. Older age meaning over 40. And she was thinking to herself she would never find someone. So here she is now. She's now having the best career because she was an at-home mother, and here she was, all she knew was her family. So now she's living she has a best career in her position. She's been now married several years, and they have a strong, secure marriage. So turning to really looking at her story is just the beauty from ashes, right? Really seeing women do the tough work to turn their life around, no matter how old they are, that there's always more. So we look at it from a psychology standpoint. We're either going to have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. A fixed mindset says, this is the way it is. This is what I deserve. It's never going to be different. And we stay stuck in that. Where a growth mindset says, you know what, I don't know what the future holds, but I know it's going to be better than today. I don't know how I'm going to get that type of money, but I know the money's waiting for me, right? Whatever it is, you have an open mindset to something is bigger and better than wherever you are right now. And she had that. So she had a growth mindset. So then she was starting to do, and even though it was hard, right, having to go back to work and figure out a career after not working, for almost 20 years. I mean, so when I see those beautiful stories, it reminds me why I do the things that I do. And to me, I joke about it with some of my women in my group that I'm their Yoda, right? So I'm their guide in that sense, which I love the name of the podcast, The Journey, because life is a journey and it's not about a destination. We're constantly growing and learning. I'm still growing and learning, and I will be to the day that I die. Like just before I jumped on here, I was on another Zoom where I was a student and learning from a marketing standpoint, marketing and learning. So I'm going to continue to learn and grow. So those moments where people really are blossoming, they're making changes, they get to the other side of healing. It reminds me that I'm doing exactly what God has called me to do, to be a light where other people don't see light in their way, to help them guide their path, and to be their Yoda.
There you go. I love that. Wait, I have a two-part question. It's really quick, but I'm curious. How long have you been doing? How many years have you you've been doing your whole profession?
Absolutely. So I got licensed in 2007. So it's going on 13 years.
So in that 13 years, right? Because now we're talking about maybe like the generation a little previous to us. You were probably, when you first entered, right? You probably were talking to a little older people. And now it's like younger people. Is the generations, have they shifted? Is our generation a little bit more of an open-minded generation versus the older, or is it the same? Do you find like some of the same problems still reoccurring that were happening 13 years ago?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. A couple things. There are some patterns that transcend time, right? And some of that is women finding, and I'm talking from a trauma standpoint, women finding self-esteem and self-worth through relationships, or through and regardless of people's orientation, but finding that there's something outside of them that's going to fulfill them inside, right? That's something that transcends generation. But the one thing that I can say that is different is there is more open-minded. If you remove religion and whatever people's orientation is around spirituality, if you remove that, women are a lot more open-minded when it comes to a lot of things. And that is a good thing, especially if it's from a place of strength. But in the same token, some of the things that I'll still see is denial of wounds and recreation of wounds. You know, for example, the example I just had given you is someone that experienced sexual trauma who didn't deal with it and healed from it, now just became exploiting of herself in a different way. But in her mind, what she would say at that time, and I experience a lot of women, especially when I go to colleges, what they'll share with me is that they feel more empowered sexually. Well, if men can do this, well, I can do this as well, right? So we kind of look at it even from, I had a discussion recently with a college group around, and I have no opinion about the song one way or the other before I say this, but we're talking about, you know, Cardi B's song, right? WAP. So we're having this conversation, and there was a mixed group. Many people felt like it was very exploitive and that it wasn't empowering for women, right? So there was a mixed group. So, but that conversation probably would not have had for the people that I've met, you know, 13 years ago, right? For example. So I actually like working with, you know, the ages of 18 to 35 is my sweet spot, because there is more of an open-minded conversation. They're not going to be, so I also speak in churches. So this would be a good example for you, Mezzy. So I went to a church probably about, I don't know, 2 years ago, and they wanted me to come into this couples, right? They were all couples, and they wanted me to talk to them about sparking fire into their sexual relationship. And these people were like silent. And these are married folks, married folks with kids. They're silent. And I even used the word masturbation, and one of the women just was like, you know, and I'm looking at all these people. I'm like, well, you guys are married and you have a license to do all these things. And what is this about? So they were very reserved, quiet, didn't want me to like use like words. It was really different. But when I'm going to, like when I went to speak at UCF, we're talking about masturbation. We're pulling up dating apps. We're doing it all, having the conversation to be real, right? So when we cannot be real, we cannot deal, and we cannot heal, right? So these people, and I'm saying these people, meaning certain generations, if they're not going to deal with stuff, they're still going to stay stuck. And this is the challenge for us, is that when we don't heal, we try to push out all the negative feelings, all the things that we don't like, but we also keep out the joy. We just can't keep out the bad stuff and think we're going to just let the good stuff in. No, because we're trying to constantly feel neutral. So if you're pulling out all the bad stuff, you're also not able to let the good stuff in. And that's where people get mild depression. There's lots of anxiety where they don't feel like there's purpose in life, and they're just walking around. I call it like the Walking Dead, walking around, you know, don't necessarily feel anything, just kind of reacting to life. So we have to have the tough conversations, and, you know, tough conversations, you make people upset. Like my mom doesn't necessarily appreciate that I talk about our family business. But you know what? It's okay. I love you, Mom, but this is my purpose and my mission and my experience. And it has nothing to do with you. But you're going to trigger people who are unhealed, whether they're family, friends, right? When you start speaking your truth. But when you have a purpose, you don't necessarily speak to those people. When I'm saying those people, I mean like your family, your friends, or the people that you're upset. That's not your people. And that's okay.
Yeah. And that's going back to what you said earlier, is that I think, you know, not saying that it's necessarily always true, but I feel like, you know, Black people, we don't get the chance to really sit there and, well, we have the opportunity, but it's not normal for us to sit there and talk about our feelings openly or go to get counseling, because like you said, we've either tried to religion or we just try to work it out and we try to make the best for it. So hearing what you're saying, I'm like, wow, like imagine if more people who are, you know, damaged or hurt or, you know, have gone through these traumatic experiences, imagine if they would have taken the time, you know, to really get that out. This way you don't feel alone. I think this is dope. This is awesome what we got going on here. I don't want to lose this momentum, but we have to go to a quick commercial break, guys. So please make sure you stay tuned. We're going to be right back.
You don't know about me, but now. You don't know about me, but now. Read up and learn about me, but now. You don't know about me, but now. Read up and learn about me, but now. Call me crazy.
girl, Nyasia Chane'l, and our co-host,
Mezzy D.
And we are here with our special guest today, Dr.Janie Lacy. And we just came off a real great topic, you guys.
Yeah.
What? Okay, we covered a lot of many things that I feel like I have a lot to say. But Mezzy, I know you have a lot to say, right? So I'm gonna let you take the torch and go ahead and do your thing.
Okay, so I don't know if anyone who's listening could also agree with me, but I know one thing that sparked something in me when Dr. Lacy said, you're gonna make people feel uncomfortable when they're not healed, right? So when you say certain things, or if you're saying like, you know, in our childhood, this happened, that's not normal, right? And they kind of look at you, everybody in the room gets a little uncomfortable. And that's kind of weird because I'm actually kind of going through that growth space right now. I moved away from my childhood home. And so now I'm on my own and I'm able to like analyze things and be like, that's not okay. But it's a weird line right now because I feel like because they're not healed and I'm on a journey of getting healed, like where is that middle ground that you are able to speak to like your mom about, right? Because you're on this place where you're in a journey where you're being healed, but like when you speak to your mom, you know, like for my examples, like they're kind of like, well, no, that didn't happen. And it's kind of like, it's like, you're almost taking away my experience from it. So is there like a middle ground that you feel that you kind of navigate through when, you know, from the healed versus the people that are on the journey to being healed versus not healed?
Absolutely. And I think it's something that we can expound to anybody, is you have to know who you're talking to. You know, so when you know who you're talking to, for one, and you know you yourself have security, because when we get to a place, right, so there's two things for women in particular. We have self-worth, and this comes from the inside, right? That means that Dr. Janie knows what she deserves. And that means I'm not going to allow everybody and anybody to have access to me. And that also means that if you come near me, you can't talk to me a certain way, right? Because I know who I am. And then self-esteem comes from the outside, right? So it's you guys giving me the compliments, right? So I can't necessarily accept those unless I know who I am, right? So when we're dealing with these two things, self-worth and self-esteem, and when people are unhealed, self-worth and self-esteem is probably not something that there's an awareness in. So you're going to piss people off. You're going to angry certain people who may not necessarily be ready to hear what you have to say. And that is okay. But what happens is when we get healed, and I remember going through this myself, when we get healed, we want all our family to get healed. We want them to say, look, there's so much more in this world. There's so much more in their life, right? So if we can do the inner work, then we can really have a lot. Life is about abundance. So not everyone's ready for that message. And that could be our mothers, that could be our sisters, that could be our cousins, right? So one of the best things, and everyone's journey is different, and I want to say that because this was my journey. The best thing I did was to move away from my childhood home, my childhood town, when I was 18. And I came back for a little bit, and then I've gone and I've never come back. I mean, I come back occasionally to visit, but most, people come down here. And the reason why this was good for me in my journey was I was able to create distance enough to experience something that was new, because sometimes if we don't experience things that are new and things that are normal, then we're not going to know that things that we experience are abnormal because it's been familiar, right? So me growing up in an alcoholic home, there's certain things that was just normal, right? And then I didn't realize that until you experience other people, places, things, and the world was so much bigger than what, I was very sheltered in many ways as a young person. So to answer your question, there are certain conversations I don't have with certain people because I know they can't handle them. And that can be people sometimes in your family. And just because you have the knowledge, sometimes, and I think it's from Spider-Man, right? When we have knowledge, we have more power. So when you know and you see that there's more out there and someone has, it's kind of like one of my favorite quotes. It's not my quote. It's from T.D. Jakes from his book Soar. As you can see, I'm a reader. But in his book Soar, he talked about the giraffe and his travels in the safari. So he talked about the turtle and the giraffe. So the giraffe has a long neck for a reason. Can see the vision, can also see the danger, and can see the horizon, where the turtle can only see what's in front of him. Many times we're the giraffe. We know there's more out there, and we're trying to talk to a turtle who could only see what's right in front of them. And you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get upset because you're going to be like, can't you see there's so much more? There's a horizon, there's a sun, there's water. And the turtle is just seeing what's right in front of them. So we can't have conversations with turtles. And a lot of times, because of our passion and the stuff, and I've learned this in myself, we want other people to experience what we've experienced, but they're not ready to experience what we experience because it's not their journey, which is why we're on the Journey Show.
Girl, I'm sorry. Can we do a clap for that? That was really, I needed to hear that. Wow. Like, I hope everybody's absorbing as much as we are, though. I really hope,
because I can ask so many things, but I feel like, even what you just said, on the aspect of finding love, okay, I would say in this generation, right? So for me, I am a romantic person, I love the idea of love, being in a family where I've experienced, blissfully, I've experienced a mother and a father together lovingly. So that's what I look for in my relationships, right? But then you come across people, and I wouldn't say I'm healed. I'm not saying I'm healed, but I can notice that there are many areas where some people aren't okay with, hearing I love you all the time. In my family, we say, I love you. All right, be safe. You know what I'm saying? So I remember I tried a relationship where I was like, okay, I love you. And he was just like, why do you keep saying that? Like, why do you, it wasn't normal. You know what I'm saying? So outside of that, what advice would you give to those people who believe in love, but in this generation, it's just so difficult to be in a relationship when the standards have kind of changed, as far as like, just saying, what I see in society nowadays is, oh, he's got to have money, he's got to have this, he's got to that. Men is, oh, she's got to be this, she's got to be that, she got to be that. Or it won't even get to a point where a relationship even is considered. It'll be, oh, we're just having a good time, What do those people do? Of course you could work on yourself, but what advice would you give to those people, I would say?
Yep. So I've studied under John Gottman, and for those that don't know him, he's done a lot of research on relationships, and in particular, to summarize, when we look at relationships that have lasted long term, and it's not because I'm not one that's impressed by somebody that's saying that we've been married for 25 years, been married for 33 years. Let me see what's really going on in your relationship. Because I know a lot of couples who are just married because they are committed and staying committed, and they're just afraid about what's out there, where they're miserable, they're not having sex, they're fighting. I mean, they hide money from each other. I mean, I can tell stories. But when we look at that, the people that have stayed together for a long time and that are also happy, there's some key ingredients that happen. And I'm going to kind of highlight some of those. Is they started off as a marathon and not a sprint. So when we talk about the generation that I see today, if we like it and we want to test drive it, we're already jumping on it, right? And when you start, especially when you move in particular a sexual relationship very quickly, just from a hookup standpoint, and don't even know his name, and you already got the U-Haul truck ready because you're already imagining having kids and what your baby's going to look like, and you don't even know how he deals with stress. You don't understand his goals, his mission, but he's fine, right? So we'll make decisions from attraction, and then when you start creating a sexual relationship, now you are attached. Right? And attachment is very different than connection. The long-term marriages have connection. Attachment says, okay, now we bonded and we got all this other stuff going on. It's hot and heavy. And attachment can come from an unhealthy place. I can get into a conversation around attachment, but it'll probably take too long. So we're looking at they're connected. They move from a place, from a marathon, from a sprint. They both understand what their values are and they're in alignment. So when I ask, especially young women I'm working with, or if, let's say I'm going to the colleges and I ask them, well, what's your top 5 values? I can tell you probably 1 out of 10 people can answer that. So if you don't know who you are and you want this man, this boy, this guy to understand you and do all this, I mean, you don't even know who you are. Right? Because your values have to align with their values, and it's more than attraction. Yes, it's a cherry on the top. You want to be attracted. You want to be able to look at them and be like, okay, got it going on. But outside of that, there has to be an alignment. Okay, what's your goals? I mean, what do you believe about money? How do you deal with stress? And one of the things that I'll see, sometimes women are afraid to ask the question because we so long for validation and approval. So I want him to approve and validate me. So I'm going to do everything he wants me to do. And I'm going to overlook all the stuff and all the signs that I know are going on because I'm so wounded and I'm getting filled from this validation. And that's going to lead you down a dysfunctional pattern. So if we look at it from a healthy standpoint, relationships is a marathon and not a sprint. And if he wants to sprint and you want a marathon, that's the number one value, not in alignment. And then we have to be, if we have self-worth, then we are able to say, you know what, it was cool hanging out with you, but we're just not on the same page. And that's good. But when I see, that's okay. When I see you around, I'll say what's up, right? A lot of people can't do that because you feel, for one, you're empty and you don't know your self-worth. And then you're looking for their approval. And then you shouldn't be with him, but then you keep overlooking it over and over and over again because that's the unhealed stuff. So there has to be connection. There has to be, and this is going to shock you if you don't know the statistic. It takes about, on average, about 18 months to 3 years to really know someone. And most people, and what I like to tell people is, if you won't let that person look through your phone, but you're going to let him have your body, there's something off about you, not even about him, right? Because that means you don't trust the person, right? Because if you should, right now, our phones are usually our most trusted things. And if you're able to give that person and say, you know what, you can look at my phone and I'm cool with it because I know who I am. No, most women, when I'm in the groups and I'm talking to them, I'm like, how many of you, the boy, whoever you're sleeping with right now, how many of you will let him see your phone? They're like, no, I'm not gonna let him see my phone. They're like, no.
Wait, I got something to say.
Go right ahead.
Real quick. Okay, so what happens if y'all aren't together, right? Because I kind of feel, how I view the phone situation is, if you're my man, you will go through my phone because you're my, you know what I'm saying? You're my man, I don't got nothing to hide with you. And that's why I consider it to be a trust aspect. But if me and you is just cool, we friends, we having a good time, you going about your business, I'm going about mine. You shouldn't be going through, like I've gone through a situation where a dude was like, oh, let me see your phone. I'm like, no, because why? Well, I think one reason why is because women, and I will say for myself, I'm afraid to be judged by you, even though I'm not your girl. I don't want to hear you judging me about what I got going on. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't want you to be talking about my situation because I'm in it. I think that might be one side of it because I can't. You ain't gonna see.
Right. My point there with comparing the phone to our bodies is that how loose we are with our most precious resource, and that's us. We'll give that away so quickly. Where, as to your point, you're not going to be able to see my phone. You're not going to be able to do all these other things because I'm really considering this my precious resource. But really, it's how much we give ourselves away because we're looking for the validation. That was really the point of it. But I get what you're saying.
You know what? So I actually, this is going to be on the flip end. So, because obviously she's speaking for the singles, I'm on the other end. I've actually been with my boyfriend for 4 years. But we're kind of in a weird space. It's so weird that you say it takes about 3 years to really understand someone and know who they are. My question is for the people that are young, that have been in relationships for years, and you start to feel unhappy. Like what do you tell people that are in relationships that have been there for 30 years, 20 years, right? Like, how does it? Because it's like, of course you think it's an easy conversation. Well, you know what? I'm not happy for whatever, and you think you can move forward, but it's like, there's a lot more, obviously, that's done, because I tried to have that conversation and just like, listen, because you think that people are healed and ready to hear what you have to say, but they're not. So then in that moment, do you just leave the relationship? Like, how does that even?
Yeah, a couple of things. So hopefully your boyfriend won't listen to this, but
right, well, I'll make sure not to send him this part. Don't worry.
But a couple
of them, but like, it's just the romance. We don't have it. I feel like, anyway, come on.
So I work in, I'm going to use this example because I work in betrayal trauma, right? So when I do couples work, it's because there's been betrayal relationally. He's addicted to pornography. He's cheating. He won't stop doing this. So when people break up or when they divorce, their breakup or divorce usually has happened 5 to 7 years before they actually broke up and divorced. And what that means to the two of you is the problems had started 5 to 7 years before, on average, is what I'm saying. Or, for example, for a lot of women that I'm working with that are coming from relationship trauma, meaning that he's cheating on her, he cheated on her, and all that other stuff. They saw the signs way before they got the evidence, right? So the mold, it starts developing, and eventually if we don't address the mold, the wall is going to come down. So with that being said, I want to kind of give you that first, is that there's a couple of things that you should do. I don't believe that people should just leave a relationship just because they're unhappy. That's too easy, and to a certain degree, because you have responsibility. I'm not necessarily saying it to you, but saying it to women in that position. You also have a responsibility. Okay, why am I unhappy? We have to be able to name it and put it into words. And then secondly, have I given this relationship all that I also promised? And how am I showing up as my best self? Because we'll do this more times than men. And I'm going to say this biasly. As women, we'll kind of sit back and say, well, I'm the queen. He needs to show up and do all this other stuff. And then when he starts showing up and doing it, then I'll start acting right. It don't work that way. It's a relationship. It's two people. So if he's not acting right, the first thing is looking in your own eye and saying, okay, well, how am I showing up in this relationship? Right? How am I communicating? Am I doing all the things, right? Taking an inventory, we call it an inventory. Then secondly, then you go to, we'll just call him, John, just for John Doe. So, John, we've been together for 4 years, and I would like to talk to you about where we are in this relationship, because there's some things right now that I'm really dissatisfied with, and I want us to talk about how we can make it better. So the first thing is you're addressing it. And then the second thing is you're going to see how John responds. And how John responds is going to be huge in that sense. So what do you think about that first?
Well, no, I agree. Honestly, you got me feeling some type of way, because I got to look at myself. Oh my God. Oh God.
And you really have to sit in my language, the shit. You have to sit in the shit and realize internally, what do you have to work on? Because coming from a standpoint of me, I've dealt with, many relationships where I would see that there would be a pattern in the kind of men that I would attract. And it would be kind of the same outcome in a sense. And I would be like, oh, it's them. What's going on? And then for a while, I learned that I had to really work on myself and see what's going on in here to figure out, how we can move forward and get past this toxicity. Because if you're coming from a point of where it's la, everything's perfect, and you get out in the real world and you're really coming up against those real life situations. And I feel like even with coming from a healthy standpoint and dealing with a toxic person can then maybe alter who you are. You know what I'm saying? And then that person is now going on to the next person. So now you're dealing with a damaged person and an already damaged person. You know what I'm saying? And it's like a cycle, a continuance of a cycle.
And it's true. And I want to just make a comment about that, is that if you've been in toxic, I'm not saying you, but general women, if we've been in toxic relationships and we haven't dealt with why do we keep finding ourselves in the same pattern, it's what we'll call a trauma response, to your point. Now you're with a new person, and let's just say he looks away at the restaurant, and now because your ex-boyfriend cheated on you, now you're in your mind, you thought he was checking out the waitress, and he wasn't even checking out the waitress. It's a trauma brain. So then you start looking at him, and then he's like, well, what's wrong? Oh, nothing. Well, what's wrong? Nothing. And then eventually he's asking you what's wrong generally. And you're like, you were looking at the waitress. And he's like, what are you talking about? Right? Because now you're coming from the trauma that was never dealt with. And because now you're seeing it's really they're literally, your brain changes, it's reactive. And you start creating narratives in your head, and you're reacting off of narratives that probably didn't even exist. And then now all of a sudden you don't trust him, because now you put it in your head, and because you didn't trust the other person, because you did trust the other person, and look what they did to me. So now I'm looking at him with the side eye, and then you can create the very thing that you fear. In that sense, 100% agree with you. And I think that's why it says we all need to get healed.
Definitely. And I'm definitely gonna be looking at myself. I'm really, you're right. Honestly, I'm gonna do like the intro. I got it. I got that. That was good. It's right here.
That I noticed for my experience, I noticed that was a common thing. I would be like, oh, what's going on with this? But I would make sure that let me get myself right for this next situation, because I want to go into each situation thinking optimistically, thinking, okay, yeah, I'm gonna give him a clean slate, because it's not his fault for what the other man did to me. It's not his fault. You know what I'm saying? You have to present yourself in the best way possible to me, and then I will judge you from there. So I feel like this is an amazing conversation.
For therapy. But you know what I like? I like that we were able to get a point of view from, like, the singles and the people that, because I think oftentimes, especially like the age bracket that we're in, like, it's so weird. Like, I know you don't think, Nyasia, that our generation is towards marriage and stuff, but our generation is so traditional in terms of marriage. Could you agree, Dr. Lacy?
I think everyone wants to find that one, right? They want to find that person that they can trust and be vulnerable. And to create that family is still part of most people's vision for their life, is to have family, to have partnership. But what happens is it gets clouded, right? So what I suggest for those that are not married yet, because I consider, if you're even in a dating relationship and there's not a ring on it, right?
Hello.
But to write out a list of what you want in a partner, right? And you want it to be as realistic as possible. And this is the other part of that, is once you write out this list, you want to write out another list, is who would that person be attracted to? And am I that person? Because many times we create lists that are unrealistic, and we would not even be the person who that person would be attracted to. You want him to be 6 figures, have a nice car, but yet you live home with mama? I mean, come on, it doesn't add up. So we have to start operating with realistic expectations. And that's where sometimes we set ourselves up for failure, is because we have these expectations. And it's not to say that if you're in a certain position that this person may not be in your history, but you have to be realistic. And a lot of times when people say your standards are too high, it's not about it being too high, because your standard should be high. It's just not realistic in that sense, because we're just looking at what we want. But the other side of it is, are we that person, right? So if I want someone who's, fitness and he's looking good, he got muscles, am I working out, right? And how do I look good, right? You got to think in those types of terms. So that's what I would want to share with you, is a very practical way to kind of operate in realistic and not just the ideal, because it gets women twisted when we stay stuck on the ideal of love and we idolize things versus really operate from a place of reality, because relationships are hard work. They're not easy.
Yeah.
Damn. That was perfectly well said.
I mean,
that was so good.
I've never thought about it. I mean, of course we see, okay, you list the pros and the cons, you list what you want. But as far as going to the point of detailed, what they want, what they would see, because I think I see that a lot as well in society, is that, for example, women will say, he liked this girl's picture, he's liking this girl, and I'm like, and I've looked at it too, where I'm like, maybe he likes something about her. You know what I'm saying? It's something that he likes about her, and it doesn't mean that you don't have it, but it's just something that he likes, and figure out what, you know what I'm saying? Figure out that kind of, that syncopation of where you are, and you said it perfectly. Like, oh my gosh, we gotta give a clap on that.
Yeah. And I honestly, this is like something that needs, I'm going to post this everywhere, because I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of family that are in relationships that mirror toxicity. It's just the like circle of toxic. Like, so I'm definitely I hope that even one person can get what I got from this interview, because I definitely, this was a great interview.
I got another question. What do you think do you think that it's necessary to establish that you and your partner have a common goal, or enterprise, or vision of how you guys see each other in that aspect? Do you think it's important to make sure that you establish that in order to see?
There's different stages. Yep, I know what you're saying. There's different stages along the relationship where you want to make sure you're on the same page. And one of the first things that you want to do is, sometimes people, and this is probably a common example you both will resonate with, or maybe your friends, is that if you want to be in a relationship and he says to you, well, let's just see what happens. Immediately, this should tell you we're not on the same page, because what will happen is a woman, especially a woman, was like, she'll say, I think I'll change his mind. They don't necessarily say it, but they'll go and say, okay, well, I'll just go with the flow and I'll see what happens. No, you're starting off on the wrong. You want to be in a relationship. And if he's saying, let's just see what happens, that's going to tell you, I'm going to tell you exactly right now what that means. That means that I don't want to be in a relationship, but I want to keep you around enough so that we can have fun, right? And I know if I tell you I don't want to be in a relationship, I don't want to ruin my chances of you not hanging with me, right? So we have to operate, and that's the first level of, values lining up. And then when you get into a relationship and then you start dating exclusively, then you're going to have another set of values. But the first value, a lot of people miss. When people tell you who they are, my angel says, show you, I'm going to say, tell you. When people tell you who they are, you got to believe them. If he says, you know what, I don't want this or I don't want that, or you know what, I just want to kick it with you, and then all of a sudden you are attaching to him as if you're in a relationship, and he's like, hey, I told you I'm just kicking it with you, but I'm also kicking it with other people. You got to believe him in that sense, and people don't believe him. And the other thing I want to say about that, because you just mentioned about the likes, this is very controversial when I bring it up in my groups, is if he is liking other women's pictures, you don't have to fuss about it, right? Because if that's his value system, that should let you know that, because to me, that's also disrespect. If he's with you and you see him liking this girl's bikini picture or her butt picture and all this other stuff, and he's in a relationship with you, you can go the first time and say, look, you know, when I'm in a relationship, I'm not going to be liking other dudes' pictures like that. And I feel a certain way by seeing you do that. What do you think about that? And if he gaslights you and says, oh, you're making a big deal about jealous, that you don't have the same value system, right? Because that's a value. So if he's in a relationship and he stops liking all that nonsense because he's honoring you, you're on the same page. But many times people want to try to change another person to try to mold them into what they want to be. And he's showing you right there. So a lot of times we get into these conversations, they're like, well, Janie, Dr. Lacy, why is he liking all these other girls' pictures? Because he likes what he sees. You know?
That's active listening. You do have to be an active listener in that aspect. Wow.
Yeah, wow. Wait, so last question, because I know we really, oh my God, this was so good. So many gems. I need to replay this. There were so many gems in this. But my question to you is like, because obviously you've dealt with people that have been in long relationships. What is that? Why do people break up after they have kids? Like they'll be together for like 15 years. They raised all their kids, and then they're just like, I mean, wouldn't that be a time for you to focus more on the relationship, like on the relationship, or?
So I work with a lot of couples actually that have been in long-term relationships. One of them right now have been married for 45 years and they're both in their 70s. Absolutely. And I'll tell you what happens. So at some point, when there's a pattern in a relationship, someone's going to get to the place where they've had enough, right? When we talk about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, if you are married to someone that has a fixed mindset and you continue to grow and you continue to evolve, whether it's in thought, whether it's in career, whether it's in whatever, and they're staying the same, at some point, you are going to not look at them the same. Most women, once they start outgrowing their partners, they start having a mother-son-child relationship, and nobody wants to sleep with their son. If you have to tell somebody what to do and how to be, it's not sexy for women, right? So you get to this place, and a lot of these long-term relationships, they get to the place where they realize that they have outgrown them 20 years ago, but they were always holding on to the carrot, and I tell you, never do this. I mean, I even did this. You hold on to the carrot that someone's going to change because they keep making promises. Oh, Mezzy, I'm not going to do that again. Mezzy, I'm not going to do that again. I love you, right? Lip service. And then we so badly want to believe them that we just listen to the lip service and we don't even look at their actions. And I'll tell you right now, this is a revolutionary thing, and I want you to really think about this. It's in the contradiction is the truth. If I say I love you and I want to spend time with you, what that means is if I say I love you and I want to spend time with you and I'm not spending time with you, that's a contradiction. So if the contradiction really says, I really don't love you the way that I say that I love you, but I'm saying these things to you because I want you to stay in place and I want the benefits of you, but I still want to do what the hell I want, right? And many times we don't want to believe the actions because we want to believe the lip service, because the lip service lines up with the ideal that we have in our head, and we're constantly trying to match them with the ideal that we have in our head versus believing who they've showed themselves to be the first time. So what happens after this relationships that are in 30s or 40 years, most of the time it's because repetitive betrayal. This particular case I'm thinking about, he's never, in their entire marriage, I'm talking about over 40 years, has never been faithful. So at some point, right? At some point, there's going to have to be a self-worth that's going to have to grow, because I know when women work with me, I can't work with every woman. And I'll tell you this right now, if they're very passive, I just want to give them a backbone and a steel boot. And so I may not be the one for them, right?
Okay, I get that. That's true. Well, we're obviously not passive women over here, okay? I know.
In mind, because I'm definitely like, oh, we gotta talk. We gotta.
No, honestly, I really feel like we should have a section where we're like, listen, because I'm telling you, there's so many girls and guys who are in toxic relationships, like, and if you like and reach out for those kind of questions, I hope that a lot of their questions were answered through this interview.
Yeah, I honestly, honestly, real quick, just because I've watched your YouTube channel and it's called Let's Talk About It with Janie Lacy, and I noticed
subscribe.
many different relationship topics and issues. And I feel that it's a beautiful thing because I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking that, and you already have the topic for that. It would be cool if you had to ask Lacy because
I know.
Section like, what about this? Wait, what about this? What's going on? But any of that. So I just want to know what's the message behind your show? Like, what are you trying to get across to people overall as an ask?
Absolutely. So let's talk about it with Janie Lacy. I focus on mental health, relationships, entrepreneurship, and business and hot topics. So most of the people that I bring on the show, they embody one of those wheelhouses, and I try to bring on all people who are experts, right? So for example, I had Tim Story on, who's Oprah Winfrey's life coach, so he was talking about the miracle mentality. And no matter where we come from, no matter whether it's a small town, whether it's an alcoholic home, we all have a potential to have a miracle mentality because we all had that as a kid. I know when I grew up in the small town of South Fallsburg, and I was, would be driving in the car, I would always be looking out the window thinking about what it would be like to be older, what it would be like to visit the world. That's a miracle mentality in the sense that you were thinking about something that was bigger than what I knew. I didn't know what the world looks like, right? I just knew South Fallsburg, right? So that is a miracle mentality that we all can birth inside of us. So that will be an example, right? So I bring on these experts that can break certain things down in a way that they have the receipts for it, because it is important that whoever you speak to, whether it's a business coach, whether it's even a boyfriend, that they got receipts. So if they're saying that this is what they're doing or this is what they want, again, we don't do lip service. Let's see the receipts, right? So people tell me, because I get a lot of inquiries to come on the show, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm Googling them. And if you're not Googleable, so to speak, especially as a professional, then, you can tell me anything, if I can't verify what you're telling me. So people like that are verified, that are well-known, that are well-connected, that can talk about mental health, relationships, entrepreneurship, all that good stuff. So the overall message is that I believe every single one of us deserves to be in a loving relationship with ourselves and deserves to have someone else if we choose to be in a relationship that loves us just the same.
Yes, definitely.
Dr. Lacy, you got me right here. I'm seriously, after this, I'm gonna be right here. This is where I'm gonna be, right in here.
Serious. Shout out to you because South Fallsburg, we from the same spot, girl. Same spot. Okay, real quick though, before we let you go, because oh my gosh, I have so many more questions, but it's okay.
I know I'm pretty sure I have like 1,000 more questions.
What is some advice that you would give someone who's considering this type of job field that you're in?
The first couple of things that I would say, because I get this a lot, because I'm a state certified supervisor in the state of Florida, so I supervise interns. So a lot of times people come into this field because they want to heal themselves. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a complete bad thing, but to be in a place where you either have gotten counseling and you're doing some self-work, because when you get on the other side of it, depending on your path, it's not easy in this sense. It's not easy in this sense because I hold space. I joke about it, but I'm like people's sin eater, right? I see in what we're talking about earlier, it's vicarious trauma, right? So I can be traumatized by sitting and hearing someone or going through certain things, but if I'm not secure and if I'm not healthy, those things can also break me, right? So you're taking on a lot of stuff, and it's important that I'm a big believer that we do not give from an empty cup. So we feed ourselves, and the abundance is what I give other people. So I travel, I go to the beach, I like movies, I like good food, I exercise, I sleep, I take care of myself, because me as the vessel is, if I'm working with you, you want to have security. You want to make sure that I am who I say I am. So if I'm telling you all these things, imagine a doctor, you're going to a doctor and they're saying, well, you need to exercise and you need to have a good shape, and they 300 pounds, right? So we have to be in a place where we are healed. And I'm not saying that I'm completely healed, but life is a journey, right? It's a journey show. We're always on a journey, but you have to be very far enough ahead, the people that you're serving, so that you don't become traumatized or you get pulled back, or it's what we call in psychology transference. So if I'm working with a man who he's an alcoholic, I have to make sure that I'm not trying to save him because I wasn't able to save my dad. right? So we have to be very clear. And what I'll say when people are going into this field, understand your why. Why do I want to get in this field? And what's unhealed in me that's driving me to want to help other people? Because sometimes helping other people can be from a codependent place and a traumatized place. Because if we're helping other people, then we don't got to deal with our own stuff, right? It's always easier to look at being a prophet in someone else's life than to be in our own. So to get that PhD in your own life first, understand, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? What were the things that defined who I am? I'm a big believer we don't stay stuck in our childhood. It's not about blaming our parents, but it's about understanding the influencers and how we became the way that we were, so that we can take charge of our life and make good decisions. And that will be a good therapist.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so do you like give, wait, I just have to, does anybody get like, can anybody like, you know, use you in your New York? Like, could they call, like, could they just get there and like, how does that work? Do you have like New York?
My women redeem programs. It's I do a couple groups through Zoom. So the last one I finished, we had a woman in Norway, Mississippi, you know, so they're from all over the world. So I have some of under my coaching programs. I mean, it's not just here in Florida, but I'm licensed as a therapist in Florida. So if I'm actually doing therapy, they have to be in the state of Florida where my license is. But my coaching programs are women from all over the world.
So how do you get involved with the coaching program?
So you can sign up. So the next Women Redeem, I have Women Redeem and I have Safe Haven. So those are my two programs. My Women Redeem are for women that have a history of toxic relationships. And sometimes it's not romantic. Sometimes it's with their mom or their sister. Sometimes people come in the group for other reasons. And Safe Haven are for women that have been betrayed. So they're coming out of a relationship where he's cheated on her, or, you know, or there's been multiple betrayals. So they're in a trauma state because of betrayal trauma. And some of them, you know, it's even not necessarily that their partner was physically with someone, it's just that he can't stop looking at pornography and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, he's looking at pornography and masturbating more than he wants to be with me. Like it's like those types of issues for the Safe Haven group.
Oh, and this is on your website?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Shout out your socials where people can find you.
Yeah. So all the social media, it's at Janie Lacy, JANIELACY. And then my business is lifecounselingsolutions.com. And then there's janielacy.com. So I'm Googleable. So if you put in Janie Lacy, you'll get all the things.
I followed you, so.
Oh my God.
I'm getting all the energy.
Oh, real quick.
That was amazing.
Wow. We gotta have you on the show because I didn't get to ask you all the questions I wanted to ask you. You've accomplished a lot. You've done many things. You've gotten a lot of awards too. So I just commend you. I appreciate you for coming on this show and dropping so many jewels on us in such a short amount of time. So thank you for coming on here. We appreciate you.
Yes, and representing the beautiful women. Yes.
Yes. We gotta have you back on here. We're gonna figure it out along the lines, you know.
Yeah,
no.
thanks for having me.
You gotta stay tuned. Again, shout yourself out one more time for the people, just in case.
Yep, absolutely. So Dr. Janie Lacy, you can find me on all the social media platforms and janielacy.com. That's LACY.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see y'all later.
You don't know about me, but now. You don't know about me, but now. Read up and learn about me, but now. You don't know about me, but now. Read up and learn about me, but now. Call me crazy, but I think
to the Journey Podcast Show with your girl Nyasia Chane'l and
Mezzy D.
Yo, that interview was no joke.
None.
Right.
No joke.
To everybody, to the viewers that have listened to this, if you feel like you are in a position where you are in seeking of counseling, you can always reach out to Dr. Janie Lacy or anybody in your area that you feel that you need to reach out. You most definitely can. I feel like that message was so powerful. She said so many jewels today. I feel so inspired, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna sign up. I'm gonna do it.
Right. If you don't realize after this conversation how important your mental health is for yourself before anybody else, I mean, there's nothing else to say here. Like,
right.
I hope that you got your little notepad, you were able to write some notes, because I sure did.
Mm-hmm. And look at yourself, reflect on self, and get yourself healed, all that good stuff. But we appreciate you here at the Journey Podcast Show. Thank you all for tuning in here today. We love you all. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Make sure you guys are following all the socials. Follow Mezzy.
That's me, Mezzy D.
Mezzy D. Mezzy _ D.
Mezzy _ D. And make sure you follow Nyasia.
Nyasia _Chane'l _
We like underscores over here.
Twitter. No, all the good stuff. It'll be in the description below. But we appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys stay tuned for the next episode as we're gonna get more in depth with these conversations and get the juiciness. Love y'all. Bye.
Deuces.